You know, usually when we talk about a haunting or, well, really any kind of horror scenario, there is this unspoken rule that we all instinctively rely on.
Right, a boundary.
Exactly, a boundary. You picture a creepy Victorian mansion, maybe a cursed forest, or just a specific dimly lit room at the end of a long hallway.
hmm
And the comfort there, the psychological safety net that keeps us from completely losing it, is that the threat is geographic.
Yeah, it's tied to a place.
Right. If things get too intense,
Yeah.
you can just leave. You run out the front door, cross the property line, and suddenly, you are back in the safe zone.
I mean, the danger decreases proportionally to the distance you put between yourself and that specific location. It is essentially a binary system of
Yeah,
survival.
binary system, yeah.
Right. You are either inside the haunted house or you are outside of it. The threat does not commute.
The threat does not commute. I love that. But for this deep dive, which we've custom tailored exactly for you, the listener, we are exploring a set of excerpts from a really chilling piece of writing called Inevitability of the Chase.
It's a fascinating text.
It really is. And the mission today is to break down the specific underlying mechanics of this story, to understand exactly why it evokes such a deep, visceral sense of dread.
Because it completely breaks those rules we just talked about.
Exactly. This text takes that geographic safety net and completely destroys it. So I want you to imagine for a second that instead of a specific house or place being haunted, the haunting is tethered directly to you.
That is such a terrifying concept.
Right. Wherever you go, no matter how fast you drive, no matter where you try to hide, the threat is already there. You can't cross a property line to escape it because, well, you are the property line.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. The narrative starts off aggressively normal. We have a young couple that are traveling together, driving down these quiet, empty roads, and just living that peaceful, picturesque van life.
And, establishing that kind of profound, undisturbed peace is rarely just for ambiance.
Yeah, it's a setup.
Exactly. It serves a very specific structural purpose in storytelling. It creates a baseline of absolute security, a sense of total environmental control.
Which makes sense because in a van, your environment is entirely curated.
Yes. You control the locks, the temperature, the destination. The subsequent drop into terror really requires that illusion of control to be at its absolute peak before it is shattered.
I always notice that when someone in a story looks around and points out how beautifully empty the roads are or like how nice it is to have no schedule, the tension for the audience actually spikes.
Oh, absolutely.
We are conditioned to know that utter isolation is a double-edged sword. To understand the sheer terror of this story, we really have to look at how that peaceful isolation instantly turns into a trap. In the middle of this quiet night, the couple witnesses a violent random car crash. Just a vehicle simply materializes out of the dark and crashes with such brutality that the driver is killed instantly.
So the isolation is shattered, but more importantly, the illusion of safety is breached. They were sealed in their own little mobile world, and then the chaotic brutality of the outside world intrudes without any warning.
It makes me think of floating alone in a really calm pool of water.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, you are just floating on your back, eyes closed, and it feels like total weightless freedom.
Right.
But then right next to your head, something violently splashes.
Just out of nowhere.
Exactly. And when you open your eyes and look around, there's no one standing at the edge of the pool. Nobody threw a rock. The splash just happened.
Wow.
Suddenly, the water doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like a massive, vulnerable expanse where you're entirely exposed.
What's fascinating here is that the text explicitly states the crash doesn't feel like an accident.
Yes, that line.
That subtle, almost imperceptible intuition is the pivot point of the entire narrative. The moment the couple feels that something caused the crash, their reality fundamentally shifts.
Why is that? Exactly.
Well, humans are biologically wired with a theory of mind. We are constantly looking for agency. So, if a tree falls in the woods, our brain processes it as physics. If a tree is pushed over, our brain looks for a predator.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
An accident is chaotic, it's random, a tragic roll of the dice. We can process chaos, but a caused event implies intent.
An intent implies an actor.
Exactly. Stepping from a world of random accidents into a world of malicious intent is the moment they cross the threshold into a horror scenario. The chaotic universe suddenly has a target.
And faced with that horrifying ambiguity, they make the fatal mistake.
They step out.
They decide to step out of their perfectly safe van and walk closer to check the scene of the crash. Now, I struggle with this part because From a survival standpoint, leaving the fortified environment is complete madness.
It really is.
But from a human standpoint, the need to resolve ambiguity often overrides the instinct for self-preservation. We step out to check because the brain just cannot stand a mystery, especially a threatening one.
There is also the element of altruism there, or at least curiosity masked as altruism.
Yeah, true.
They need to comprehend what they just saw, but by stepping out of their vehicle, they are voluntarily leaving their only shell of protection.
They are entering the sphere of the anomaly.
Right. They trade a physical barrier for visual confirmation.
And the source material describes the moment they step out incredibly vividly. The crash disrupts their peace, but it is the environment outside the van that introduces the actual enduring threat.
The silence.
Yes, they notice the silence, but not an empty silence. The text says it feels heavy, almost like the air itself is watching.
Such a great line.
It's so creepy. And then they realize they aren't alone in the dark. It's not a person standing there. It is something else. And the detail that stands out the most is that it doesn't attack them. It simply watches.
And that lack of kinetic action completely weaponizes the fear. The entity refrains from giving them a tangible event to react to.
Let me push back on the mechanics of that for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If I am standing in the dark next to a horrific car crash and I see a threat in the shadows, my immediate biological instinct is that I want it to charge at me.
You want it to attack.
Well, I don't want to be attacked, obviously, but if a monster sprints at me with fangs bared, at least I know the rules of the game. I know its speed, its size, and its objective to hurt me.
Right, it's a known quantity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why does an entity that just stands still and watches feel infinitely more terrifying to us as an audience than a kinetic attacking monster?
The answer actually lies in how the human brain processes threats and the breakdown of our ancient biological protocols.
Okay, unpack that.
When a threat attacks, your amygdala instantly triggers the fight or flight response. The ambiguity dissolves.
Your body just takes over.
Exactly. Your body floods with adrenaline, your vision tunnels, and the situation becomes purely tactical. Survive the next 10 seconds.
Right.
But when a threat simply watches, it denies your brain the release of that protocol. You are trapped in the freeze state of the trauma response.
Because there is no action to react to. The brain is basically revving the engine in neutral.
That's a perfect way to put it. It creates an unbearable cognitive load. You cannot understand its motives. You don't know its rules or its capabilities.
And we hate not knowing.
We despise it. When the human mind faces a complete lack of information regarding a massive threat, it doesn't shut down. It actively runs simulations.
Oh, wow.
It tries to predict what the threat will do. Without parameters, the mind populates those blanks with worst-case scenarios.
So if it's not attacking, it must be planning something worse than a physical attack.
Exactly. By doing nothing, the entity forces the characters, and by extension, you as the listener, to imagine infinite horrors. It elevates the threat from a mere physical danger to an agonizing, prolonged psychological tension.
You essentially become the architect of your own terror.
Precisely.
So naturally, faced with this incomprehensible watcher, the instinct is flight. They get right back into the van and drive away immediately.
Which makes...
Right, they put miles between them and the wreckage. They drive down different roads. They pass through different towns. But then they notice the impossible.
It's still there.
The entity is still there.
The geographic safety net is dismantled entirely. The distance they are covering is completely irrelevant to the threat.
There is no safe place. They have no idea what this thing wants, but it is always in the periphery. You can just see the emotional collapse happen rapidly in the text.
Oh, it's brutal.
The paranoia, the intense fear, the absolute exhaustion. Resting becomes a lethal proposition. If you close your eyes to sleep, you do so knowing that this incomprehensible thing is standing just out of sight, observing you.
And the physiological toll of this continuous state of hyperarousal fundamentally erodes their sanity.
Because you can't stay on high alert forever.
No, the human body is not built to sustain peak adrenaline indefinitely. Cortisol continues to flood their system.
Right.
Sleep deprivation alone induces a severe breakdown of logical processing. Within just a few days of zero REM sleep, the brain begins to experience microsleeps.
Which blurs the boundary between reality and hallucination, right?
Exactly. Add a literal stalking entity to that biological deterioration, and their mental faculties are being systematically dismantled.
So, what does this all mean? The mechanics of this chase actually remind me of being stuck on a nightmare treadmill.
A nightmare treadmill, I like that.
Well, in a normal pursuit, running creates distance. You burn physical energy, but you buy yourself space and time.
Hmm.
You change your relative position to the predator.
Right.
But on a treadmill, you're burning all of your energy, sprinting as hard as you can, and your relative distance to the threat hasn't changed a single inch. The brutal paradox highlighted in the text is that, quote, the more they run, the closer it feels.
Mm-hmm.
The act of fleeing is somehow tightening the noose.
This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of the entity they are dealing with.
What do you mean?
If we analyze its behavior, it is clearly not using speed or physical strength. If it wanted to outrun a moving van, it would need to be a physically superior apex predator.
Right, like a cheetah or something.
But it doesn't chase them in a conventional kinetic sense. It is using pure inevitability.
And inevitability is such a terrifying concept because it bypasses defense mechanisms. You can't fight a concept. You can't outrun gravity or aging.
Exactly. The chase isn't a race to capture them. It is a slow, deliberate erosion of their endurance. It operates on the knowledge that human biology requires maintenance.
We have to sleep.
They have to stop. They need sleep, fuel, and comfort. The entity requires none of those things.
Wow.
It doesn't need to be fast. It just needs to be a constant fact of their reality until they collapse under the weight of it. It outsources the effort of the hunt to the prey itself.
That is so deeply unsettling. The physical exhaustion forces a horrifying realization that completely reframes the nature of the haunting.
The twist.
Yeah, as they are deteriorating on the road, running on fumes and panic, they piece together the truth about when this nightmare actually initiated. It wasn't the violent impact of the car accident.
No, the twist in the text reveals that the nightmare didn't start at the site of the wreckage. It started the exact moment the couple saw it.
Which is just wild.
The text states, quote, they didn't just witness something, they became part of it. The act of witnessing made them active participants in the horror.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In almost all traditional horror, the victim makes a tangible mistake.
Right, a moral failing or a lapse in judgment.
Yeah, they read from the forbidden book, they trespass on the sacred burial ground, they ignore the creepy old man's warning at the gas station. There is an action that invites the consequence.
Always.
But here, there's no bad moral choice. There is no cursed object being brought into the house. The trigger was simply looking. The photons from the scene hit their retinas, the visual cortex processed the image, and their fate was permanently sealed.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are talking about is the concept of contagious awareness.
Contagious awareness.
Yes, it functions similarly to an infohazard, a piece of information that harms you simply by being known. In this story, the anomaly existed in isolation. Once the couple perceived the anomaly, they became tethered to it. The awareness is the infection.
It's like clicking a malicious link in an email.
That's a great comparison.
You don't have to download a file or install a program. The mere act of navigating to the page executes the script in the background. The awareness acts as the digital tracker that allows the malware to install itself directly into their reality. They locked onto it with their gaze, so it locked onto them.
And the profound tragedy of this setup is that their innate human curiosity, the totally natural, almost involuntary reflex to look at a car crash, is the exact mechanism that doomed them.
We all rubberneck.
Exactly. We all slow down on the highway to look at the wreckage. It's an evolutionary survival trait to observe danger so we can learn from it and avoid it in the future.
Right.
This story takes that universal everyday impulse, hijacks it, and turns it into a death sentence. To survive, they would have had to override millions of years of human evolution and look away.
It is incredibly bleak, and it brings us to the final narrative beat of the source text. The ultimate question, do they escape?
The source is brutally direct.
It says, not really, because as the text states, this isn't something you escape from. It doesn't chase you to catch you. It follows you until there is nowhere left to go.
And then comes the most chilling line of the entire piece.
Yeah.
Quote, it doesn't need to follow anymore.
That line is a total gut punch. It implies that once you run out of road, once you finally collapse from the exhaustion of the nightmare treadmill, the chase simply concludes.
It's over.
Whatever the watching entity actually is, it finally consumes you or takes you or initiates whatever incomprehensible action it was waiting for.
It speaks to the absolute futility of their struggle. Every mile they drove, every sleepless night they endured was ultimately pointless.
Because they were already caught.
They were caught the second their eyes processed the scene. The running was just a drawn-out, painful physical acceptance of that fact. The struggle was basically part of the digestion process.
So dark. As you, the listener, sit there thinking about the mechanics of this story, I want you to connect this feeling of inevitability to your own life.
Because it's a very real feeling.
It really is. Obviously, we aren't being stalked by supernatural entities on empty, dark roads. But think about those very real moments of inescapable anxiety or deep existential dread.
Mm-hmm.
Think of how sometimes when you have a looming deadline, a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or just a persistent worry, the more frantically you try to run from that feeling, the more suffocating and close it becomes.
Distractions stop working.
They really do. The geographical changes, going on a vacation to clear your head, fail completely because you brought your head with you.
Right.
The anxiety, much like the entity, is already there waiting for you when you unpack your bags.
The monster is a masterful externalization of internal dread. You cannot outrun your own mind, and you cannot outrun inevitability. The harder you fight it without confronting it, the more exhausted and vulnerable you become. The psychological resonance of the story is that avoidance is just a treadmill that guarantees exhaustion without offering escape.
It's the ultimate trap. And it leaves us with one final, lingering thought to chew on before we wrap up this deep dive. Something that builds on this whole terrifying concept of contagious awareness, of the infohazard.
Oh, this is the really scary part.
Yeah, we've established that the horror in this story is triggered simply by the act of witnessing. The couple didn't touch anything, they didn't do anything wrong, they just looked.
They perceived the event.
Right. And by knowing about it, they became permanently tethered to the entity.
I would proceed with caution here.
Well, think about the logical conclusion of that mechanism. If the trigger is simply awareness, if knowing about the thing is what summons the thing into your reality, then by reading the story, or in this case, by listening to us break down the exact psychological mechanics of this entity during this deep dive, have you just become its newest witness?
Oh, wow.
What if merely understanding the inevitability of the chase is the exact thing that invites it to start following you?